Genshin Impact is an online RPG gacha game by Chinese game developer studio Hoyoverse. Crusader Kings is a medieval grand strategy game with RPG elements by Swedish game developer Paradox Interactive. The latest entry of Crusader Kings 3, was released in 2020, but today, I'll be talking about the previous 2012 iteration, Crusader Kings 2. Why? Honestly, I'm more familiar with CK2 than CK3. Plus, it's free, making it more accessible to people. CK2 has thousands of mods and dozens of total conversion mods. Some zoom in on certain parts of the world like Switzerland, the HRE, or Arthurian Britain, and some create original worlds, such as the post-apocalyptic After the End mod, its sequel After the End fanfork, and spin-offs like New Era Old World. Other mods reimagine various franchises through the lens of CK2, such as Warhammer Fantasy, World of Warcraft, and Avatar: The Last Airbender. Today, I'll make a case and propose a Genshin Impact total conversion mod for Crusader Kings 2. CK2 is an old but gold game with a thriving modding community. It's not a game for everyone, but I recommend you try it. With precedent to mod CK2 into different franchises, this mod could give a Genshin player a fresh way to experience the world of Teyvat, and introduce CK2 players to a new lore-rich fantasy setting. For the Genshin Impact fans who are uninitiated to CK2, who will be most Genshin Impact fans watching this, I'll explain the mechanics of CK2 as I go. Crusader Kings isn't only a grand strategy game. Just like Genshin Impact, it's an RPG. The way CK2 visualizes the character whose role you'll be playing as is with character profiles. Here is your portrait, showing you what you look like. CK2, with the relevant DLCs, has a wide range of character portraits that represent many ethnicities of the old world. The CK3 character creator, admittedly, has more freedom to sculpt appearances than CK2, with mods such as Guardians of Azeroth showing off the creative limits of their character sculptor. In my proposed mod, a good solution for translating Genshin's anime-style aesthetics could be with the CK2 anime portraits mod, but I digress. It serves its purpose well. This mod would need its own original portraits to accurately represent the ethnicities of Teyvat and the real people from whom it draws inspirations from. CK2 is great with representing a diverse range of phenotypes, so for this mod, I can't see why we couldn't represent the people of Natlan, Sumeru, and even some people in Liyue more faithfully to the real-life people they draw inspiration from. The nations of the Ring of Fire and Africa for Natlan, the nations of North Africa, Arabia, the Middle East, West Asia, Central Asia, and South Asia for Sumeru, and China, including all the Chinese minorities that inspired parts of Liyue, for Liyue. Considering the lore of Genshin, we need to represent not only ethnicities, but also Teyvat's fantasy races. There are elves such as Layla, Chaska, Iansan, Alice, and Klee, yokai such as Ei, Makoto, the Wanderer, Yaimiko, Arataki Ito, Kujosara, and Kirara, adepti such as Shao, Cloud Retainer, and Yanfei, Shalodin's tribe, Nepecha, Nichka, and Tlazoli, and many others. Many intelligent races that aren't humanoid, such as the Night Ravens, the Toy Soldiers, the Origami Forest Folk, or the Dragons. This could be one advantage CK2 could have over CK3. Seeing a sentient toy soldier as a 2D portrait will be less of a suspension of disbelief than seeing it in the 3D art style of CK3, in my opinion. Profile info. Here, on the character profile, is all the information that makes your character your character. Your portrait, your age, name, surname, if you have one, many people don't, and traits. These traits typically show your education, lifestyle traits, personality traits, genetic traits, or illnesses and injuries. Education traits. There are 5 kinds of education traits for the 5 stats, each with 4 levels of how educated you are. Martial, diplomatic, stewardship, intrigue, and learning. To give you an example of how Genshin's character's education could be, Divine Priestess Sanganamiya Kokomi would be a brilliant strategist with high martial stats, but would, in turn, have a low diplomacy and intrigue stats. She's notable in the game and her trailers for excelling in battle and warfare, but struggles with interacting with people and sniffing out the Fatui plots from among her own troops. Lifestyle traits. Lifestyle traits are gained through a chain of events, or the CK2 Way of Life DLC. They determine what a character does in their free time. For example, characters such as Tartaglia and Clarande would be duelist, but Claron would also be a game master. Most graduates of the academia would be scholars. Kaveh would obviously be an architect, etc. One could also create custom lifestyle traits, such as Genius Invocation TCG Enthusiast, a trait that you would give to Cyno and every NPC you can duel in the game. Personality traits. Personality traits can determine whether characters are stubborn, such as Alhaitham, Kaveh, Cyno, and Tainari, if they're just, like Udex Nuvalet, content, like Lisa Mincy, shy, like Fremine, or religiously zealous, like Kujo Sara. Characters usually have 3 personality traits, but 4 and 5 are possible. In making the Crusader Kings versions of the Genshin cast, you'd use their most assertive traits if you think they fit into more than 3 or 5. Genetic traits. Genetic traits are immutable characteristics that a character is born with. We can determine who could have these traits with character feats and textual evidence. For example, Shenhe was shown in the game to be able to carry a near Jade Chamber-sized boulder of Jadeite on her own.
Oh my god, I can't believe my eyes.
So, she could be argued to have the strong trait. Also, being strong in CK2 and brawny are 2 different things. A person can be born strong, but a person who trains and eventually becomes brawny will end up looking like someone like the Fatui Skirmishers or the Smiths like Wagner, Master Zhang, or Hajime. An example of strong versus brawny would be the Wanderer versus a Fatui Skirmisher. As for in-game textual evidence for a genetic trait, Wanderer is written in-game to look beautiful, so he could have the fair trait. As well as textual evidence, we could also use our powers of deduction to conclude that those related to these characters could also share these traits. If Wanderer is said to be beautiful, and was created in the image of Makoto, ergo, Makoto can also have the fair trait. Since A is Makoto's twin, and the Raiden Shogun was made in the image of A, those 2 would also be fair. Now, Genshin and other games that use anime-inspired styles suffer from the same face syndrome. I digress. Moving on to illnesses and injuries. Illnesses and injuries should be self-explanatory. You could have the flu, you could be ill, you could have cancer, or dysentery, or food poisoning. Genshin also has illnesses unique to the setting. Sumeru has Elazar. The Natlanese suffer from memory loss if they disconnect from their Wayub, and any number of diseases caused by Teyvat's leyline disorders. Some of these can be cured as a traveler completes the Archon Quest event chains. Spoiler alert, for a 3-year-old Archon quest, Nahida, with the Traveler and Greater Lord Rukkhadevada's help, cure the Withering and Elazar. The second part of Crusader Kings 2, which you'll be spending 50% of your time looking at, is the map. You can switch between looking at the terrain, the political borders, the religions and cultures of the world, to something as specific as to how developed the wall technologies of a province are. In each of the CK2 map modes, the land is divided into provinces. The smallest unit a province can be is an individual county, with groups of counties forming a duchy. Duchies can form kingdoms, and kingdoms can finally form empires. Political maps. We already have the Genshin map to work off of, so we can draw the de jure, or on paper, borders of each nation of Teyvat. We can have a bit of fun visualizing how Teyvat's borders could be in the year 500 after the Cataclysm. At the start of the game, most of the provinces across the 7 nations are overrun with treasure hoarders, the Fatui, the Abyss Order, and Wild Hilichurl tribes. The provinces of areas such as Dragonspine, Sivrumii Island, the Chasm, and the desert of Hadramavet would be marked with leyline disorders, making them dangerous to own or have your troops walk through those provinces. Religious map. In vanilla CK2, religion plays heavily into the gameplay loop, dictating what your peers consider sins, who you can marry, and who you're hostile with. Each region in Teyvat will follow their Archon at the start date. Mondstadt's Church of Favonius resembles a typical medieval fantasy Christian church analog, with a cathedral, crucifixes, and nuns. Mondstadt's faith in Barbados is likely the strongest any region has for their Archon. There's a potential for heresy in this religion, such as the Church of Favonius twisted under the Lawrence clan, the old faith of the Goddess of Time, and the worship of the God King Decarabian. Liyue's worship of Rex Lapis is intrinsically tied to their government, since Rex Lapis and some of his adepti lived among the governing humans of Liyue. With all the contracts and ceremonies in Liyue, their religion acts more like a bureaucracy than worship. Liyue is filled with religious diversity. The Liyueans in the countryside seek out the Adepti for help and blessings. The people of Chenyu Vale have rituals connected to Fujin, with Ling Yuan acting as the counterbalancing force of nature. Changsheng has a lineage of doctors who follow her teachings. The god of salt, Havria, has secret believers in Liyue. Osail and Baish had their human followers, who they killed. Thus, their ancient religion would be extinct at the game start. In addition to all this religious diversity, dead and secret religions, the primary faith of worshipping Rex Lapis would be shaken up when the events of Chapter 1 of the Archon Quest take place, and Rex Lapis dies. The Tri-Commission of the Inazuma Bakufu and the Grand Narukami Shrine of Inazuma serve a similar role as the Qixing and the Adepti do in Liyue. The Tri-Commission carries out the orders of their Archon, like how the Qixing did. Gujiai of the Grand Narukami Shrine solves supernatural and spiritual problems for the Inazumans, as the Adepti do for Liyueans. Inazuma also has one coexisting religion, the Watatsumi worship of Orobashi. At the same time, the islands have multiple dead faiths, such as the faith of the Great Thunderbird, the worship of the Primordial One in Enkanomiya, the Goddess of Time in Enkanomiya, and the faith of the Sun Children in Enkanomiya. Before the Archon Quest, Sumeru was divided between worshipping Greater Lord Rukkhadevata and the Lesser Lord Kusanali. After the Archon Quest, Irminsul is modified, and only Lesser Lord Kusanali remains. Many of the desert folk worship King Deshret, but they also disagree on how they should worship him, and how to treat each other, and how to treat the people of the rainforest. Others worship King Deshret's subordinates, such as the Temple of Silence. A few of the desert folk instead follow the Goddess of Flowers and her familiars, such as the Tanit tribe. They distinguish themselves as matriarchal, which ambitious heretics like Azarik wanted to reform into a patriarchal belief system. And finally, the Order of Skeptics works with the Pari, descendants of their god, Egeria. Egeria will be unique because she is both the former Hydro Archon and the god of the Order of Skeptics. The Court of Fontaine acts similarly to the Shogunate, but instead of ruling, the Hydro Archon gave all her duties to her Eudix, Nouvelette. Spoilers for the Fontaine Archon Quest. When Focalor returns the divine throne of Hydro to Nouvelette, he becomes the new Hydro Sovereign, allowing Furina to retire, and combining the Hydro Authority with the highest political office in Fontaine as Eudix. The Natlanese worship the Wayab and the Lord of the Night. The people of Natlan don't worship their Archon like other regions. Instead, the Pyro Archon acts like a champion fighter and a rallying figure. What the Natlanese do instead is revere their ancestors, who live in one consciousness in the Wayab. Gestalt hive minds in the Night Kingdom, the spiritual realm of Natlan, ruled by the Lord of the Night. The people of Nodcry are divided in their beliefs, with the Frostmoon Scions worshipping the Moon Sisters as a whole, and the Frostmoon in particular. They also revere Columbina as their Kutar, as the living avatar of their Frostmoon. The Lightkeepers act as a kind of holy order in Nodcry, fighting a ceaseless battle against the Abyssal Wild Hunt. And finally, the Fatui, under Sandrone's command, act as a colonizing force upon Nodcry, imposing the political will of their god, the Zaritza, the nations and their governments. This is just me, but when you play Crusader Kings 2 as much as I have, it's refreshing to play as a new nation with a new government. You can choose Feudal, Ikta, Merchant Republic, Monastic Feudal, and Imperial in the vanilla game. Feudal is the default government, where you have tax and military obligations to the people below and above you. It's a pyramid of power with a king or emperor on top. Ikta is the same, but exclusive to characters who follow Islam. Monastic Feudal is a government exclusive for characters in the Tibetan Plateau. The Imperial government is unlocked when you play as Eastern Rome or reform all of their Roman Empire. To drive the point home, other mod projects have created beautiful portraits and government designs such as these. Mondstadt. Mondstadt would be ruled over by the Order of the Knights of Favonius, with Diluc carrying over Dawn Winery, the Knights of Favonius investigation team controlling Dragonspine, and the rest of the region being controlled by Fatui and Hilichurls. The Knights of Favonius would have a modified version of the Holy Order government from vanilla. You wouldn't need to rely on having a family, because their heirs are chosen by the last Grand Master, or even among the Knight Captains. They would be able to rule over castle holdings and tribal holdings, given that their headquarters is a castle, and knights like Albedo camp out in the wilderness. Besides the knights, Diluc rules over Dawn Winery. The aristocrats, such as the Lawrence clan, still rule enough land to maintain their wealth, possibly being just feudal. Lastly, the Church of Favonius works alongside the knights, responsible for the cathedral, the statues of the Seven, and the Stormwatch towers. Liyue is ruled by the Qixing, or the Seven Stars, referring to the 7 stars of the Ursa Major constellation. We know that the 7 Qixing members are named after the 7 stars. We can connect 3 of the positions to 3 characters: Tianshu Uncle Tian, Tianshuan Ningguang, and Yuheng Kiching, with the other 4 members unknown to the traveler. Since Liyue is the most prosperous nation and the wealthiest city in Teyvat, with the government focused on commerce, the Qixing government could be mechanically modded off the Merchant Republic government of Crusader Kings 2. Typically, Merchant Republics work with 5 cooperating families, but adding another 2 should be manageable. Maybe. Inazuma. As I said earlier, Inazuma has the Tri-Commission and the Shogun's army. The Tri-Commission governs the nation, while the Shogun assigns members of the army to each of the 3 commissions. The Tenryou Commission focuses on military matters and defending against monsters. The Kanjo Commission guards their border and controls trade and commerce. The Yashiro Commission protects the shrines, festivals, and public events. As we saw with Ayato, the Yashiro Commission promotes culture and arts in Inazuma and abroad while gathering intelligence for the Shogun. Sumeru. At the start of the game, Sumeru is fractured between the Academia and the Core 30, the Eremites of the desert, the Temple of Silence in the desert, and the Order of Skeptics in the Girdle of the Sands. As the Traveler helps more and more, these factions are brought together under Nahida's leadership. The Academia works like a theocracy, where gathering knowledge and becoming a better scholar brings them closer to their god. The Academia is a temple, and their modded government type would be close to the monastic feudal government. The Desert Folk would end up with a government like the Ikta government, with factions such as the Tanit, Ain al-Akmar, and the Temple of Silence and Order of Skeptics, blending their secular and religious leadership roles. Fontaine. Fontaine is divided into the court system and the Fortress of Meripede. The court system works with Farina as a figurehead, and the Eunuchs governing below her. The Court of Fontaine, or Fontaine City, answers directly to the Eunuchs. The Marechaussee Phantom acts as the detective force, police force, and military of Fontaine. Meanwhile, the Palais Mermonia acts as Fontaine's civil service. The Fortress of Meripede, meanwhile, works independently from the courts. This could be represented in-game as the courts being unable to rule over the fortress under normal circumstances. Natlan. Natlan seems more intuitive to understand. The land is divided into 6 major tribes: the Children of the Echoes, the Scions of the Canopy, the People of the Springs, the Collective of Plenty, the Flower Feather Clan, and the Masters of the Nightwind. Each tribe has its own region, and the Pyro Archon has their city in the middle of the area. These 6 tribes act like a confederation, with the Pyro Archon as their speaker. As we see with Mawika, she's earned the respect from not just the tribal chiefs, but also the champions and ordinary people of Natlan, making the government of Natlan more like the tribal government of CK2, benefiting from the charisma and prestige of its central ruler. Nodcry. Nodcry would be divided at the game's start, and would remain divided until the Traveler arrives 5 years after they started adventuring with Paimon. Hisi Island is controlled chiefly by the Frostmoon Scions. Paha Isle is almost entirely controlled by the Fatui, with Flynn's controlling the Lightkeeper's Lighthouse in the northeast. And Lempo Isle is dotted with Fatui, Kuvaki-empowered beasts, the Wild Hunt, the Lightkeepers, the Krumkake Workshop, and Nasha Town. Nasha Town itself has its own competing factions, such as Lord Sangama Bay, the Voynich Guild, the Adventurers Guild, and the Curatorium of Secrets. Finally, this is where we'll find the Knights of Favonius expedition, where Grandmaster Varka has taken Mondstadt's fighters against the forces of the Abyss. I can't say much about Snezhnaya. The region will likely be released before I get a project like this off the ground. This is all I had to say about this idea, without giving you all of my Obsidian notes verbatim. Tell me in the comments if you like Genshin Impact, Crusader Kings 2, or both. If enough of you want to contribute, this mod could be made. I'd undoubtedly like any experience helping hands. And if somebody out there is already making this mod, and that saves me the effort, and I'd like to wish those devs good luck. Greetings! I'm Baa'el, your shepherd. I hope you enjoyed today's mod concept with me. If you like this, look at my other videos for what ifs and coulda beens. My channel is still finding its flock, so your support means everything. Leave a like, tap subscribe, and join the flock. Have a world you'd like to witness? Please leave your ideas in the comments. I'm always eager to spin new yarns with you. Until next time, Slán, agus ingat. Ha ha.